I literally just took a breath and I started again. And I said, my name is Billy. I can feel the ground beneath my feet. I have the right to be here. Something like that. And Mary came into the center of the circle and kind of walked around the circle and just looked at everyone. And everyone's like, what's she doing? And, looked at us in the eyes, and she grabbed my hand in a gentle but firm way. And she said, brilliant save.
This is Arts Educators Save the World, where successful artists and their mentors talk about how arts education transformed their lives. Hey! Welcome back to Arts Educators Save the World, a podcast where artists and their mentors talk about the impact that arts education has had on both their lives. Everyone, usually this is the time in our podcast where I say, hey, Alec, and Alex says, hey, Erica. But today I get to say, hey, Jamie.
Hey, Erica.
Jamie is, this is the first of what I hope to become a regular series of guest co-hosting duties from my friend and CEO of Story Pirates, our executive producer and children's media giant. And I am so thrilled, Jamie, to bring you into the conversation today and in the future. I won't spoil too much about what we did, but suffice it to say, you and I have a similar mentorship background in college. And we brought in one of your best friends, who is
Billy Eichner.
Actor, comedian.
Auteur,
thank you. We all have the same college acting teacher, and this 2-episode special is going to be a lovely and hilarious and touching and just really insightful romp through our collective experience as undergraduate acting students at Northwestern. Hope y'all enjoy. We are going to kick things off with what I've decided to coin today as a conga line intro. I don't think it's the best descriptor, but it is an introduction chain where I'm going to introduce our guest co-host for the day. Then he is going to introduce the artist that we've brought. And then our artist is going to introduce the real star of today's show, which is our mentor.
The old person.
That's or the old person, as she's decided she would like to be called. My guest co-host for this episode, Jamie Salka. Jamie is himself an arts educator who is saving the world. Jamie's superhero costume comes in the form of a producer. He is co-founder and CEO of Story Pirates, an award-winning innovative educational media company whose mission is to celebrate the words and ideas of young people and to create confident, literate students equipped with a variety of tools for verbal, written, and artistic self-expression. Sound familiar? My own work with Whoopin' Soccer that you've all heard about is based on many of the very same ideas. But think of Whoopin' Soccer as Story Pirates' weird, less exciting Midwestern cousin, because the Story Pirates universe that Jamie has been instrumental in building is truly remarkable. It includes a suite of award-winning podcasts for kids, including the Story Pirates podcast, books, music, and music videos, all based on stories and ideas written by kids, performed by an amazing list of artists, a live tour where professional actors bring kids' stories all around the country, and the nonprofit Story Pirates Changemakers. I have been lucky enough to benefit from Jamie's producing genius. He and Story Pirates are executive producers of this very show. And through that relationship, I have come to know Jamie as what I think of as the very best combination for a producer. He's whip smart and gets stuff done, but it is always in service of making kids' lives better through the arts. It is an honor to call him a colleague, a friend, and now a co-host. Jamie, welcome to Arts Educators Save the World.
Thanks, Erica. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. It's great to be on the show instead of just behind the scenes.
Woo woo. All right, conga line. I don't
All
know.
right.
It's not really a conga line. Whatever that's called. Next in line.
I will conga right over to my introduction. I am really thrilled to introduce one of my best friends and star of television, stage, and screen. His name is Billy Eichner. He is best known as the star, executive producer, and creator of Funny or Die's Billy on the Street. You might also recognize him as Craig from Parks and Rec. He starred with the incredible Julie Klausner on Hulu's Difficult People. He's been a frequent star of American Horror Story, American Crime Story. He was in Neighbors 2. He was in the live-action remake of Disney's The Lion King.
I have 2 scenes in Neighbors 2, just for the record. 2 scenes.
They were the only 2 I saw.
I believe that about you.
And exponentially more than everyone else on this
That's
podcast.
Billy also wrote and starred in The Incredible Bros, one of my favorite movies. But of course, I know him best as the star of the 2001 off-Broadway production of I Sing, which I co-wrote and directed. I'm thrilled that you are on the show today. Billy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy. Jamie Salka, one of my dear friends. Thank you. Is it my turn to speak? Although I've already spoken 5 times.
I'm going to pass the conga baton to you
The conga baton.
to introduce our real guest of honor. Go for it.
Yes. Thank you, Jamie. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here. Jamie Salka, one of my favorite people on the planet and a huge part of my life and career and everything. We went to Northwestern together and we still text pretty much every day. I am here to introduce Mary Poole. Mary Poole was and still is in many ways my acting teacher, who I had when I was at Northwestern with Jamie in the years 1997 to 2000, which was a long time ago, but I feel her impact on my life in almost every possible conceivable way all the time. It's going to be really hard for me not to get emotional talking about Mary Poole. But I will say that she changed my life and changed so many students' lives over the many years that she taught at Northwestern. She was my acting teacher. She made me a much, much, much better actor. But more importantly, what she does is make you a much more open, honest, empathetic, intelligent human being. She did that for me. She's done that for countless people. And I really do think she is one of the all-time great human individuals. And the last thing I'll say, because I know we're going to talk more, is number one, thank you, Mary Poole, for that. I love you so much. And whenever it's been so many years now since I graduated, and because people recognize me sometimes, especially other kids that went to Northwestern, people will come up to me when I'm roaming around the world and they'll say, oh, hey, Billy, I went to Northwestern too. I was a theater major too. And then they'll say, or I'll ask, oh, who was your acting teacher? Who did you have is what we all say. Who did you have? Which sounds kind of much filthier than it's really a lovely thing. And whenever they say I had Mary Poole, what happens every single time is some version of looking at each other, almost not being able to find the words to say, aren't we so lucky? Can you believe that we were lucky enough to have Mary Poole? And that exchange always happens. And it's really an amazing, tremendous honor to introduce Mary. Hi, Mary.
Hey, Billy.
So Mary's already sobbing.
Mary's sobbing.
For those of you listening at home.
Do not.
Sorry, Mary.
Do not feel badly. You are not the first and will not be the last pair of artists and mentors to have this conversation be an emotional one. I mean, for many people, we talked to Jonathan Groff and his elementary school music teacher, And similarly, we turned the cameras on and they started crying.
Yeah, but Groff cries at the drop of a hat. he's my pal. I can say that. Yeah.
But Linda Tuff, I don't know. She seemed like she was a bad bee, and she started crying too. Well, the way that I like to start these conversations, even though it has been, as you said, Billy, some time since you were in Mary's class, is to reflect on the first time you remember working together. And it does not have to be the same story. In fact, it is often delightful when they're different memories or different stories. But if we can start with sort of, and Billy, maybe we'll start with you, kind of what's the first thing that you remember about, having Mary work with you as a mentor, as a teacher, as an artist?
Sure. Well, I mean, I was in class with Mary Monday through Friday, sophomore, junior, and senior year, so it's not like she directed me in a play right off the bat or something. We got to know each other in class. I don't remember the first exchange we ever had, but I'll tell you, I'm working on a project right now. This is not a shameless plug because it's not coming out anytime soon, but it involves me writing about my childhood and teenage years. And there's a whole section about my time at Northwestern and Mary's class and Jamie and all my friends that I made there and the impact that all of that had on my life. So I've actually, this podcast came along at a great time because I've been thinking so much about that time and writing about it and trying to connect the dots in a way that I never really have before, And so I write about different moments with Mary and Mary's class and a lot about Northwestern, but one of the first things I remember, which I write about in this project, is there was an exercise we did in Mary's class early on, probably in the first week or two, where Mary had us all stand on the stage in a circle, the whole class. And there was kind of like a mantra she gave us to say, I guess you could call it, and we each had to individually, one-on-one, whenever we felt the moment was right, there was no order, step into the center of the circle and look at each other and say something to the effect of, and it was a long time ago, it was the fall of 1997. So I don't remember the exact words, but it was something to the effect of, my name is Billy. I am standing here. I can feel the ground beneath my feet. I have the right to be here. Okay. So I'm not getting that exactly right. Although it started with, it was 3 or 4 lines. It started with, my name is, and the last line was, I have the right to be here. That I know. And when I felt it was my turn, I was kind of, I came to Northwestern. It was my first time in the Midwest. I grew up in New York City, in the city. I went to high school in Manhattan. I had really fabulous, supportive parents who took me to see a lot of theater as a kid and movies and indie movies and gay things that were too mature for me to see. I was very exposed to a lot of culture as a kid. I had been a child actor. I had attempted to be a child actor in New York with an agent when I was younger. I'm coming in hot, as they now say, with a lot of New Yorky, know-it-all, snob adjacent energy, and really took pride in that I was a New Yorker. And I was kind of judgy about the Midwest and about Chicago, not about Mary and about acting class, because that's the reason I went. I was very, very serious about that. But just the environment, I'm how old am I at this point? 17, 18, something like that, And so I think to myself that this mantra for where I was in my life at the time feels a little bit sincere, too sincere, and a little cheesy, perhaps, something like that. I was bringing my kind of know-it-all. I took the subway to high school every day, sticky thing to it. And so I thought, well, I'm going to not just say the words. I have to do something with it. I have to put a little attitude on it. right? I have to show that I'm kind of over it or cynical about it or something, right? Because you can't just say it. Like, that's not enough. And it's too sincere. And so I walked into the center of the room, and I don't remember exactly how I did it, but it was something like, my name's Billy. You know, it had that like tone of like, it had a bit of an eye roll in it. And Mary, but I also wanted nothing more than Mary to think I'm great, right? This was, and for the whole class, I wanted nothing more than to be a great actor, right? And so I looked at Mary, and Mary, it's tough because I don't know if she didn't say anything, but I don't know. I hope I could do this in a way people listening get it. But she kind of looked at me like, I'm going to add a little sound here just because you'll never know. She didn't say anything. She just went, like she made a face, and she kind of scrunched her face to say like, oh, no. You're doing something. This is not honest. Right. And I saw that, and something clicked in my head, and I was like, oh, and I literally just took a breath, and I started again, and I said, my name is Billy. I can feel the ground beneath my feet. I have the right to be here. Something like that, you know? And Mary came into the center of the circle and kind of walked around the circle and just looked at everyone, and everyone's like, what's she doing? And, you know, like looked at us in the eyes, and she grabbed my hand in a gentle but firm way. And she said, brilliant save. Brilliant save. Right. And I thought, oh, okay. And I always remembered it. And that is in that little story, and I hope that wasn't too long, but in a little gives you a little microcosm type of sense of the journey that Mary took me on over the next 3 years as an actor and as a person.
Mm-hmm.
You made me cry just doing the mantra here because it's so vital and so clear.
Mary, tell us what the mantra is. Did Billy have it mostly right?
I think Billy has it. Wait a minute, I have a reference.
So, listeners, Mary was also my acting teacher. And though I have not gone on to the same world that Billy and Jamie have gone on to, obviously I also benefited from all of this genius. And I had not remembered that until you said it. And I was like, mantra, where are you going with that? And as soon as the words came out of your mouth, I was like, oh shit.
Wow.
Yup. I remember that.
That's cool.
I remember that. Especially that I have a right to be here.
Yes,
piece.
that's definitely how it ended. I think there's a line in the middle I'm fudging or leaving out, but I know it ended with, and I know it had, I can feel the ground beneath my feet, and I know it ended on, I have the right to be here. Yeah.
It absolutely ended on, I have the right to be here. Jamie?
I also had Mary Poole. So all three of us have that in common. And I hadn't remembered it either. And I had the same experience of getting chills straight down my spine, Billy, when you started doing that. I think it is an incredible example of what being in Mary's class was like, but also a microcosm of the entire experience of going through a multi-year program with Mary. I would guess that the experience that you had was almost universal, of coming in a little bit as a punk with an attitude. I had that too. I remember a couple of years ago, I found my acting journal from my time in Mary's class, and looking at entries that I'd written for, we had assignments that I think you gave us to write in our journals, and you would give us feedback in the journal. And I remember looking through the version of me that wrote journal entries in the first semester in your class, and I was so embarrassed about the person that I came in as compared to how grateful I am for the person I came out as.
Mm.
I had a similar experience of coming in a little bit high on myself, a little bit of an attitude that maybe I'm better than this, that I perhaps was the real actor coming into the class and that everyone else was, I don't know, something different.
Mhm.
And I remember coming out of the class many, many experiences later, having become more grounded, as the mantra suggests we should, having become humbled, having become a bigger part of the community, and having had my heart entirely opened to myself and to the world around me.
Mhm.
And I know that everyone who's ever had Mary Poole has that experience. And so I've also had that experience of meeting a total stranger somewhere in the world. This has happened dozens, if not maybe 100 times to me, where I
Mhm.
meet someone and we discover that we had Mary Poole as acting teachers in different years and different generations, and we just hug each other, a total stranger. It happens almost every time. But I wonder if we could sort of take a step back at, I think you were sort of getting at this, Erica. All of us in recording the show right now have the experience of having been through this experience with you, Mary, and having come out as people who are changed, I think, universally for the better. Can we reset to the beginning of the experience of coming into your class? What did you think of all of these students coming in with all of these attitudes and crazy ideas, and everyone's in their head? And, what was your process like to sort of, what it felt to me like from from my perspective, sort of cracking us open gently, but with some force, as Billy's saying, like firmly but gently? What was it like from the beginning? What were you thinking as you were approaching all of these hundreds, if not thousands, of students that you began to work with?
I was thrilled.
Hmm.
I was thrilled to look at 25 to 30 little faces and go, let's find out what's inside you.
Mhm.
I truly believe, as Jamie and Erica work so hard to prove, that the arts, and particularly theater, is a way of learning to think about the world and to think about each other. And who better to teach you about what it is to be a human being than you? I don't think I had any great plans, or, this is the Chaucer side is this, and the Sam Shepard. I wanted you all to be comfortable, and I wanted you to be comfortable being who you were, or at least to give you a chance to comfortably discover who you were at this point.
Mm.
I figured that that would make you the best kind of actor, because the story's there and there are big chunks of the characters there. And if you can step forward knowing about being a human being, then most of the work is done. And you should have an imagination too and know some other human beings. But that's a lot to ask of an incoming freshman. I loved having all these people to play every day. I don't think I set out with any great plans, you guys. I was teaching in a liberal arts program, and I love theater, and you all loved theater, and you came with that. And then we could make stories happen.
Mm-hmm.
I started out just liking to be with all of you,
Mm-hmm.
and teaching you, playing games, reaching out, putting you in horrible circumstances, making you get out of it. Or in Billy's case, he knew he was in a mess, so he got himself out of it. What a great thing to learn the first day of class. Oh, if I pay attention, I can figure out what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have I have lesson plans, but I have no grand scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And you weren't to be made into anything. You were to be sort of, I wanted to strip away what got in your way
Mm-hmm.
of being grounded and having the right to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I believed you had the right to be there. You would have to find that for yourselves eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a great planner. And
Mm-hmm.
as an actress, I couldn't even tell you my own development.
Did you always want to be an acting teacher? Did you set out to become a teacher of
No.
acting? No? So how did that happen?
No. I wanted to be an automotive engineer.
Wow.
Is that true?
Kind of, yes, my grandfather was.
Uh-huh.
But after I'd been in college, the first year I fell in love with a guy who was going over to fight the Vietnam War. And so then I wanted to be a nurse. And so then, no, I did some acting classes at Michigan. And I thought, oh, this makes sense. I understand this.
Mm-hmm.
And I had always loved stories, and I knew that. So I think that's what brought me to it. You guys, it's
Mm-hmm.
simple. It's so simple. It's nothing grand or some
Mhm.
great gift I have. I loved you, and I did love my students.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved when we made stories together.
I have a question. Can I
Okay.
ask a question?
Of course.
God, yes.
I have a question and a comment. My question is, who, if anyone, taught you how to teach? Or did you just kind of figure it out as you go, what works for you, what your philosophy is?
Some of you may understand this. Jim Coakley was my acting teacher at
Uh-huh.
Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
He wasn't very good at it. He would give us the plays, and we'd talk about the plays, and then we'd perform.
Uh-huh.
But what I loved most was that the plays were so intellectually gripping and amazing, and that it only became more so when you began to bring them to life. So for me, acting's always been an intellectual exercise as well. And look at the three of you. Doug, I'm sure you're part of it too. But these three people are so smart. They are so bright, and not just about human behavior, but so smart. You too, mister. and excited to think about things and solve problems and use acting as a way of solving the problem of Fool for Love. Or I don't know, what else did we do?
Like, what do you mean by use acting as a way to solve the problem of the play?
Because the play is a story about human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And it only works finally and becomes clear in the embodiment of performance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what's so wonderful, you guys, is that all three of you, all four of you, all five of you could take on, the Chekhov play, and each of you could play the same character, and yet you would teach us what you bring to it.
Mm-hmm.
And making stories come alive.
Something I hear a lot in what you're saying, Mary, but also Jamie and Billy. So I have this book called How the Arts Can Save Education, which is kind of where the idea for this podcast came from.
Right,
And
that you've
something
written. This is a book that you wrote.
That I have written. That is about the ways in which arts practices ought to change how we do teaching and learning across the board. And something I talk a lot about is that no one can learn anything new unless they are willing to take a risk, and that risk taking must be scaffolded in a learning environment. So you can't just say to someone, take a risk, and that's enough, right? You have to structure pretty heartily the scaffolding to get people to a place where they're willing to take a risk. And I hear a lot in, Mary, what you're saying about like, yes, the play is the thing, but you can't just give somebody a play and be like, put on this play, right? There's this whole back end of interactions that have to happen that, set opportunities up to make work and to do things. And that is so clearly true in theater, but it's actually true in any educational space. And which is why I'm so inspired by like the story that you told, Billy, of like, this is how scaffolding risk-taking happens in real time.
Scaffolding risk-taking. Now I feel I'm truly in an intellectual discussion.
Well, what I wanted to say, the comment I had that I think about a lot and that I talk about with some of my other friends who were also theater majors at the time I was, who are some of my closest friends to this day. Mary did all of that with a very compassionate, empathetic style. To call it style makes it sound more crass even than I want it to sound. But what Mary did is teach you, yes, the craft of acting, how to be a better actor, how to analyze a scene, all of those things, right? But she did it in such a compassionate, empathetic way that you were never scared to take a risk. That's what you're saying. That scaffolding she built up is done in a way which really encourages you. And it's maternal. It's paternal. It is, it is. It is. There's like, it's going to be okay. As long as you're doing the work and you're showing up, it wasn't like anything goes. Mary's way of teaching goes hand in hand with the experience of having her as a teacher, and why decades later, Jamie and I have this experience of seeing people all over the planet and coming up to each other like, oh my God, Mary Poole, how lucky were we? And it was because of that, whether it was a decision or just who you are, Mary, that is such an essential, rare part of your magic. It really is.
Actors are brave. Children are brave. And I can't understand how you could teach anyone anything or lead them into an experience without support and warmth and respect for what they're doing. Because what we're asking you to do is really hard. And that first exercise that you talked about, Billy, is you have to be so brave to do that. That's the point that we want to come to. I can stand in front of you with no protection whatsoever, even into my very heart. And I'm going to let you look. I'm going to let you watch. And I belong to you for the moment, sort of. I'm a way of taking you to understanding. And oh God, I just can't imagine making class anything but supportive and warm and loving.
It was an incredibly loving environment. That's what it was. And what it is therapy also. No, I mean it. I mean,
definitely.
it's a really good acting teacher. I mean, acting, learning how to act, it is a form of therapy. I'm the billionth person to ever say this, because
No.
it's about looking into yourself. It's about exploring your vulnerability, your how you feel in a certain situation, the walls you're putting up, all of that stuff. You can't understand what a character's going through if you're not having an honest understanding of yourself, right?
Right.
And in those years, I would imagine there's more. No one was talking about mental health in those years. Not the way that we talk about it now. Like actual, real vulnerability was not something, as loving as my parents were, that we ever really dealt with. And so it was Mary who really did that, because Mary valued honesty and being vulnerable and being open on stage and off. And that's what I mean by it's therapy as much as it is learning the craft of acting in a way.
And I want to get in a little more to some of the crafty bits.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to add that
I gave all of my exercises to the archives in the library. Well, I have no idea what they were.
The other piece like that I want to offer in, and I'm curious if Jamie and Billy, if this speaks to you, the single biggest takeaway that I had, Mary, and Billy mentioned this, but for listeners, the program that we went to, we had acting class 4 or 5 days a week, every day for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So this was a very intensive, extensive experience with the same people. It was a cohort. So we had the same 25 colleagues for that time. The single thing that I have taken with me is, and I'm curious everybody's reaction, is what you would tell us about any choice we would make was commit to the gesture. So you would say, I don't care what gesture you're making. You need to commit to that gesture, and that's what a good choice looks like. And I have taken that to everything. Like, it makes me think of what you said about therapy, right? It's not therapeutic, but it is like how I do everything in my life, which is there's no value in being like, well, right? Like, I'm going to commit to that gesture because that's what's going to make the thing work. And I don't know if either of you remember that particular piece of coaching. And you were coaching that within the context of an acting choice, right? You weren't saying like, life advice, kids, commit to the gesture.
Yeah.
Right? You were saying like, if you are going to point somewhere, point, right? But for me, that internal advice resonated to like everything I do in my external world.
My experience personally, and I think almost everyone who had you, if not everyone, did walk away with an experience that you were on some level giving that type of life advice, that everything that we were learning in acting had some deeper and bigger application to everything that we did when we were in school and beyond. And it's really interesting getting a chance to talk to you now about what you were thinking or not going into it. The scaffolding, I think we didn't know what's in your head or your heart as you're teaching us. We came in, with all of our own baggage and in my case, and I think Billy's, like our own weird egos and edginess, and the experience that I had in the class is I'm reminded talking with you here in a way that I suspect listeners who've never heard of you before can feel for themselves, that the scaffolding that you had to offer was the feeling that you brought to the class. Billy called it attitude and said, maybe that's too trivial. I can't remember the exact word, the style, right? But it's interesting listening to you say, I didn't have a plan. What you had was the belief in your students from a very particular perspective, which is your ability to see through all of the stuff in everybody's way and see the person underneath. and the trust that Billy's talking about or Erica's talking about that we experienced in the class, in some way, the maternal quality was your belief in us. I feel it now. It's happening. Just the tone in your voice, the way that you were talking about, what you were bringing to the table, it's present right now in this very podcast. And it transports me back to that place where I was learning to believe in myself through your eyes and ultimately through my own. That's the thing that I think I've carried with me, but I've never been able to articulate that. It's an incredible opportunity to get a chance to reflect on it now with you all these years later.
You were each so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted you to come to see your importance, what made you different and special. And, I wanted you to be comfortable in who that was and to appreciate who that was and to trust who that was. Which doesn't sound at all like acting, I suppose. And I've never thought of myself as an acting teacher. I'm not an expert. I just know that if you understand yourself and you've got an idea of what shared humanity is, then there's nothing to stand in your way communicating that to an audience, telling a story of human action. I'm so deeply touched by each of you, and each of you are people that I loved hugely at that funny age of 18 to 22. And look what you've done. And I'm so proud of that and so excited by that. And if I helped, great. I do remember trying to explain to someone one time recently, in the age of be very careful, they'll sue you, that we would sometimes hug, not a hug, but to put pressure and make you resist, things like that. And I thought, oh my God, I would have been sued.
Did every group go through their phase of, and in which scene will I get naked in class? Because our class went through that phase.
Wait, you did?
Yes, we had several students. And I think, and when I say it that way, it sounds ridiculous and inappropriate. And maybe it was, as you said, in the age of like everybody getting sued. But I think it's an example of being in an environment where risk-taking is par for the course. And as a 19, 20-year-old person, what's the riskiest thing that you can think of? And as adults, as emotional adults, probably that's actually not the riskiest thing we can think of now. But when you're 19, like taking all your clothes off and, acting like a crazy person in a Greek tragedy is the riskiest thing you can think of. And I think very much we wanted Mary to not please you, but to show you that we were hearing you. Like we were hearing you about what I think of in some ways as the difference between performing and acting.
What is that?
For me, it's like I was thinking about both of you saying like, I came in and I was sort of cocky. I think I came in being a performer. Like I was real good at tap dancing and I could sing real loud, right? And like I could play a scene in a musical and I could perform, but I don't think I didn't know anything about acting. And so for me, being in your acting class was about coming to understand the difference between those two things. And you described it as being able to tell a story, right? I sort of thought at first of acting as performing. It's playing a role. It's, saying the lines in a way that's
Presentational.
Yes, presentational, and people love it. And you pick a character, you play a character, and you have a walk, whatever the rather than acting, right? Which is this storytelling. And of course, now as a professor in education and the arts, I think everything is storytelling, right? And there's all of this rich theoretical stuff that confirms that, right? That like everything is storytelling. And you were teaching us to be storytellers. Hey everyone, that is the end of part 1 of this 2-part episode with writer, actor, comedian Billy Eichner and his college acting teacher, and mine and Jamie Salka's Mary Poole. If you loved this conversation about what Mary did for us as human beings, you will love part 2, where we get into specifics about the process and the nature of acting class and what Mary did for us as artists. See you on the flip side.
Arts Educators Save the World is hosted by Erica Rosenfeld Halverson and produced and co-hosted by me, Alec Lev. Our executive producer is Doug Matica, and our audio producer is Justin Asher. Special thanks to our collaborators, the brilliant and talented Kate Baldwin, and our great friends at Story Pirate Studios, Lee Overtree, Benjamin Salka, and Amy Fiore. Original music is by Dan Lipton, and our artwork is by Lyra Evans. Check out our website designed by Cole Locasio at www.artseducatorspodcast.com. We're on Instagram at ArtsEducatorsPodcast, and you can write to us with your questions and comments at contact@artseducatorspodcast.com. You can also find us at a place called YouTube. And wherever you're listening, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. It really helps the show. We're proud to be sponsored in part by the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the Gibb Faculty Fellowship. Arts Educators Save the World was created by Erica Rosenfeld Halverson and Alec Lev.